guys, my name is Hope Davis and I am owner of The Hopeful Kitchen, and I have been tasked today with showing you guys how to cook a simple, fast, and frugal recipe. So today I'm going to be showing you guys how to do a basic Alfredo sauce. With this sauce, you'll be able to have it done in like 30 minutes or less, and you can add your choice of protein. My choice of protein today will be shrimp, but you can also add chicken or whatever you want to add to it, but it'll be a great sauce and super easy to make. Okay, so let's start with your ingredients. So today you're gonna need some shredded Parmesan, or you can even do shredded Romano cheese. Both of these are robust cheeses that actually bring out a great flavor for Alfredo. You're gonna need half and half and heavy whipping cream. I also cheat and use a little bit of milk, so that way it kind of thins things out a little bit, but it's not gonna be too heavy. So I do about a cup of milk, and then I do like almost a third, 3/4 or 1/4 of a cup of the half and half with it. Okay, so that's gonna be our sauce. You also are gonna need fresh garlic. I like to use 3 cloves because I like my sauces to be really garlicky. However, you can definitely substitute the minced garlic if you don't want to go through the hassle of having fresh garlic. But to me, fresh garlic makes things better. And then we'll also top off the sauce with some fresh parsley. Okay, so let's get to making the sauce. So we're gonna take our garlic first and come over to the stove. So you're gonna have about 1/4 of a cup of butter already melting down. So if you're doing the pre-minced garlic, you can go ahead and toss about a tablespoon in. If you're using the fresh garlic, you need a microplane or a grater. And so you grate down the garlic. So I just kind of rest my microplane here and I grate down like this. And once you get to the hub, you can just toss it in your container. And again, you want to grate down, make sure you get as much of that garlic as you can, because it just enhances this Alfredo sauce flavor a ton. Okay, so we'll toss that one and do our last piece of garlic. You want this on a medium heat, guys, because you don't want to burn the butter. Because although I love brown butter, you don't want the brown butter to mess up your sauce. So you want to have your sauce pretty much on your butter melting on a low heat. Okay, so you want to tap the back of your microplane because you have a lot of garlic that actually gets stuck back there. So you want all that hard work. You don't want it to go to waste. So just tap it there and it'll fall in. So now you're going to move this around pretty good, and you want your garlic just to get cooked slightly, and you'll start to smell that nice garlic and butter flavor coming through. So you're gonna let that kind of stir it around a couple of times and let that get going. Okay, so the hard part here is you're gonna let that sit for a minute, and then you're gonna come over and get your milk. So I like to whisk in my milk and my cream with a whisk. Just because when you take butter and you do milk or heavy cream or any type of half and half, you have to make sure it emulsifies together. So you want to whisk this pretty quickly as you're adding it to the garlic and butter. So I just kind of start whisking it in, just like this, just so you can kind of mix everything together. And as you'll see, it's going to start to blend pretty nicely. So once you have that done, you can turn up your heat to like a medium high. And so that way that milk can go ahead and start to cook down a little bit with that half and half to get some thickness going. Okay, and so now we're gonna add the heavy cream. So again, you also wanna whisk this in as well. The heavy cream is gonna be a little bit thicker. So this is gonna help with the sauce a lot. And as you can see how thick that heavy cream is. That's why heavy cream is the greatest, because it has a very high fat content. So it's very good when you're making like Alfredo sauces or any type of cream-based sauce. You definitely want to use a heavy cream. You can also do a lighter version of that. And so I'm going to bump this up a little bit now that I have the heavy cream and milk and all the butter. So as you can see, once you get a little bit closer, you'll see how the butter is not, you can barely see it because you whisked it in, and so it kind of emulsified really nicely, and you don't see any clumps of the milk curdling, and that's because you want to slowly, gradually bring this temperature up. So now that we have the temperature up, we're going to let that come to a boil. In the meantime, you need to already start your water for your noodles. So I had like a half a pot of water going. So I had it on low just so that that water could be starting to simmer a little bit. So I'm going to bump it up a little, just a tad. And I'm going to add a little bit more water to this before I put my noodles in, because as you'll see, that'll start to cook pretty fast. So I turned that on high. So now you're not really waiting forever for the water to get hot. So it'll stop bubbling for a minute, but it'll pick back up pretty quickly. So now that your sauce is bubbling, it's looking really good. So once you see these bubbles, you want to just start to whisk away, and then you can turn your heat back down. And I always fan it a little bit if it starts to get angry, or you can always have pot holders and lift it off the eye a little bit just to let it calm down. Because some people don't do this or pay attention and it spills over, and that's where you have your problem. So you can always lift it up like that to take the heat down as you've already turned the heat down on the eye. So like I said, this sauce cooks really fast, so it won't take you long to kind of get it together. So again, you want to keep it at like a medium high now that it's come to a boil, because what's going to happen is as you continue to stir, the sauce is going to start to thicken up. And so we'll just let that kind of boil a little bit. And now that we've added the water, that's going to look nice. Okay, so I've turned that down. My water's cooking. I prepared my shrimp already. So you never want to toss raw shrimp into a sauce like this. You want to kind of pre-cook it, and you don't want to cook them to where they are completely done. So I always just put a little butter in a saucepan and kind of just toss it in there for like no more than 2 or 3 minutes, okay? And so that they're nice, they're tender. Once you put your spatula down, they should be really squishy. So just like that. So that means we cooked them perfect. Like I said, it shouldn't take any more than like 5 or 6 minutes for your shrimp. Okay, we got our sauce going, which is looking really lovely. So we have our water boiling. I like to use the Italian fettuccine private collection by Kroger, but you sure can use any type of fettuccine. When I'm not being lazy, I like to make my own pasta from scratch, but for today's purposes, and we are cooking on a budget, we're just gonna buy the Alfredo noodles from the store. So you take these out, and some of them may already be broken, which is fine, because you're gonna probably just snap them in half. To me, it helps with the cooking time, but you can, if you had a bigger pot, you can definitely let them and not have to break them in half. But I take them and I just give it a good little pop towards the pot, and then that way I can just drop them in like that, okay? So you'll let those just kind of sit, and once it starts to boil up a little bit, you can take you a fork and just kind of toss those noodles around so they don't stick. Now, the misnomer is that you always need to put some oil in your noodles to keep them from sticking, and that's not the case. You can do that if that's how you were taught, that's fine. There's certainly nothing wrong with that. But if you just kind of peep in them and you stir them a bit, they won't clump together. So I typically don't put oil in mine. I do it like the Italians. I just kind of throw it in the pot and let it go. Because when you make fresh pasta, you don't want to put any oil in it because it'll weigh it down. So because I cook with fresh pasta a lot that I make, I just toss it right into the hot water. And so we're going to let those boil. Now we're going to check on our sauce again. So as you can see, it's starting to thicken up a little bit. So that'll be ready. So in the meantime, that's going to cook for about 2 more minutes. So now I'm going to come over here to the parsley. So when you are ready to garnish your Alfredo at the end, I've cleaned this parsley. You know, you always want to clean your fresh herbs. Even if they're packaged in a container, I always clean them just to keep from any type of contamination. So you pop the stems off like this, and I always tell people, you know, ball your fingers up and curl them under when you're using a big knife like this. These knives are really sharp. I like Wusthof knives. I like sharp knives. So when I'm telling people to use my knives, I always tell them to be extra careful because I keep them sharpened. But you want to kind of round your fingers out like this as you're holding it, so that when you make your chops, you're protecting your fingertips. And I kind of go in a rocking motion like that. So once I have the majority of it chopped, then I come here with my hand on top of the blade like this, just to get it even more fine mince on that. Just like that. So you want to kind of go about like maybe 3 or 4 times back and forth until you get nice little bitty small pieces there. Okay, so now that that's done, you want to just sit that there because you're going to toss that in last, okay? So at this point, it's time to add the cheese. I like to do both. So I use Parmesan, I use Romano because I like those robust cheeses. So we're going to come back to our sauce now. Okay, so we're looking really good. You see how that's foaming up? It's getting really nice. So once we add the cheese to this, you'll start to see that the sauce is going to take on a different appearance. So we're going to shake a little Parmesan in here. Now, I don't measure because I've just been cooking this for so long, but you want to start with about a half a cup of each. And then, you know, the more cheesier you want it, the better. So you can add as much as you want, but I kind of just eyeball it and I just toss a lot in there. Okay, now the next step is you got your cheese in here. So you want to start to bring your sauce together. So as you can see, it's starting to thicken up a little bit more because you have added the cheese. And so then we're going to turn the heat up a little bit more so it can start to really boil and thicken. And if you kind of see where your sauce is still a little bit too thin, you can always keep adding cheese. So, because who, you know, wouldn't want more cheese, right? So with that, I'll add a little bit more Romano just because I like it. And I'm going to stir that up. And then we'll just kind of let this simmer a bit so it can start to really get thick. So by the time we're ready to add our noodles and our shrimp, we'll be good to go. Now at this time, as my sauce is kind of cooking with the cheese and thickening up a bit, I'm gonna go ahead and start to season my sauce. So I like cracked black pepper. You can get a grinder or you can just use regular black pepper out of the store, but I'm gonna give it a couple of twists and crack a little bit of black pepper into this sauce because it really kind of bumps up that flavor. Okay, so we're gonna stir that up a little bit. And then salt. I don't like to cook with a lot of salt, so I kind of just add a pinch or a dash or two in here, and I mean that's about as much as I put in my sauce. I mean, you know, you're going to be serving a vast amount of people, so you don't know who has hypertension issues, you know, or who can't tolerate sodium very well. So I never over salt my food. I always kind of leave it to my guests to kind of salt their own things. Okay, so now we're going to check on the noodles, and so we're going to stir these up a bit. And I'm gonna lift this up a little bit just so I can kind of see what I'm working with here. And as you can see, they're almost ready. And if you get a few that stick, you know, you're not perfect, that's fine. Just kind of keep taking your fork and just drag it across the bottom and they'll usually loosen up. And so we're gonna let those cook a little bit more because they're almost ready. And then in the meantime, our sauce is looking very nice. So I'm gonna go grab a spoon really quick as you guys be my eyes and watch that so I can just show you the consistency of it. Okay, so you know your sauce is getting about done when you can start to see it hang on the spoon. So you see how the sauce is not really running on the spoon. So we're not quite thick enough yet. So you still want to let it cook down some, but it's sticking to the spoon. So that's a good sign that you're almost there. So by the time our noodles get done, the sauce will be ready. So again, with Alfredo, super easy to make. And as long as you got milk, some half and half, and some heavy cream, you're good to go. Even if you don't have a protein, some people, you know, aren't really big meat eaters, but this sauce is so versatile that you can do it with the noodles and be absolutely fine. And okay, so our sauce, as you can see, is now ready. It's very thick and very cheesy and bubbly. So now we're gonna add everything to it. Okay, so I like to take my noodles fresh out of the pot. I kind of learned this when I was visiting Italy a couple of years ago. The Italians just dump it straight in because you want the pasta to stay nice and moist and not dry out. So I'm gonna slowly start adding that to our sauce. So you just let it drain a little bit. Again, we're gonna dump it right in there. And I just get some tongs and take a little bit at a time and just kind of dump it in there, because you also don't want to have too much water, but you always want to save your pasta water in case you get your sauce too thick. You can always add like 2 or 3 tablespoons of pasta water in there, and that'll be great. Excellent. Okay, I'm going to now go to my fork because there's only a few left, and I'm just going to try to slim them out. And at this point, if you need to dump off the little excess water, that's fine. But if you only have a few, I just kind of fish them out with the fork. That's a little bit easier than trying to grab a whole bunch with the tongs. Okay, so now that we got our pasta, you're just gonna toss that pasta in, and like I said, you see that sauce is getting nice and creamy. Okay, and so your noodles are in, you're good to go. All right, and now it's time to add the shrimp. So I just kind of scoop those out and dump those in, and just kind of one at a time, because sometimes the shrimp, you know, they're gonna need to cook just a little bit, but they're mostly done. But you don't want them to, you don't want to overcook your shrimp, because that's when they get tough and rubbery, and nobody wants to eat a tough and rubbery shrimp. Let me tell you that. Okay. Some people also use the tails, and they use the tail on. A lot of Italian restaurants do that. They leave the tail on. They'll just take the shell off. I like to eat, so I don't want to have to pull off tails or anything. So my family, they don't like to have the tails on, so I usually just take all that stuff off so we can just get down to eating. Okay, so now that you had your shrimp, you just stir your shrimp in, and as you can see, we're looking really, really yummy here. Okay, so as you guys are my eyes, I'm gonna let you watch this, and I'm gonna go get our garnishing, which will be our parsley. Okay, so I've got our garnishing, and I usually just scoop it up with my knife and just shake it in there just like that. Okay, and you can put as much parsley as you want. You know, parsley really kind of has just a mild flavor. To me, I like a lot of color in my food, so I'm always garnishing with something. And so now that we have the parsley, we're gonna just toss it all together. And look how pretty that looks. That looks really yummy. And now you're ready to start it. So with Alfredo, if you are a college student, and if you were a college student like I was a college student, we didn't have many fancy plates or anything. So a good old bowl to put your hard work and hard-earned meal in is just as fine. So at this point, to plate for your guests, you just want to basically take some with your tongs, scoop it up in your bowl. And my family always laughs at me because, like, I try not to have a mess with my plating, because I'm always neat. They always say, oh, your plates look like you came from a restaurant. So with that said, you can always take a little small paper towel or napkin and run it around the edges of your bowl or your plate to kind of clean that and clean it up just a little bit, so that when you present it, you can present it where it looks really nice. So with some of the leftover parsley, you can always add on top, or what I like to do is I like to have that ground pepper look on my dishes when I plate them. So voila, there's your shrimp Alfredo. So again, super simple, super easy. It only took maybe 30 minutes to make, and now you have a nice gourmet meal that you cook for yourself. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you guys get to make some great Alfredo. And again, you can always follow me at The Hopeful Kitchen on Instagram or Facebook, and you can see other recipes or other things that I venture out and cook on those sites. Thank you so much.